I'm David Parker, I think as everyone knows, the Executive Director of the Asian Literary Prize. And tonight we're going to be announcing the long list for the 6th Asian Literary Prize, sponsored by our current title partner, the Man Group. And as ever, I'd really like to thank Man and everyone at Man for all their wonderful help, not least this space, which we've used over the last few years for this kind of announcement, and also the technical equipment that allows us to do this announcement from London via teleconference. It also gives me pleasure to introduce to those who don't know him the Chief Executive of Man in Asia, Mr. Timothy Peach, who's very good to have you here. Tim. Well, this is the 3rd year of the new format that we introduced in 2010. Now, I think in retrospect, we can see that this decision to make this change has been a very important moment in the growth of the prize in the last few years. In fact, at the beginning, we had to work rather hard to get the, and this is rather counterintuitive actually, but we had to work hard to get the attention of the publishers of the world to the fact that it's now up to them to enter books in the prize, whereas of course before it was writers. So that we started off in 2010 and we were working very hard, and we had 54 entries. In 2011, we got up to 90, and this year we have a record of 108 entries, which actually takes us into the ballpark of the Man Booker Prize in terms of numbers of entries. Well, of course, none of this happened on its own. Behind this spectacular growth is the indefatigable work of our wonderful manager, Marina Ma, and her tiny team of helpers. And they've been having to work very hard in calling and emailing and cajoling and pushing in order to get the attention of those publishers and to put the prize very much on their radar, and also actually the radar of the world's leading agencies, literary agencies, because they also have actually proven very important in getting entries. I guess everyone here will have noticed that there's been a parallel spectacular growth in the media uptake of the prizes, lists and winners. Both regionally and globally, the prize has greatly increased in visibility, and that has been entirely due to the work of one young man, our publicity officer, and that of course is Harrison Kelly, who is, I think, an incomparable person in this respect. Now, all this matters because what really matters to us is that the writers in the region get visibility around the world, and that, I say, is incredibly important. And also, around the world, readers are buying books, they're reading them, discussing them, books that they would never have had brought to their attention before. And I think that this is one of the great things that the prize has achieved. I think everyone knows probably that last year's winner, Please Look After Mum, actually sold its 2 millionth copy during this year. And part of that was an incredible spike in the translations into English following the announcement of her as the winner, the author as the winner of the Man Asian Literary Prize. Well, we've got a long way to go, but we look forward to a time when the books listed for this prize are inevitable conversation objects in the homes of the vast Asian middle class, a middle class that's highly educated, becoming wealthier and wealthier. So there's going to be a time when they're all talking about the books that we list and talking about the winners. And this is what we're looking forward to next. Well, it gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight the chair of the 2012 judging panel, Ms. Maya Jaggi, who is waiting in London to announce the 2012 long list. Maya is one of the most distinguished cultural journalists and literary critics writing today. She's sat on the juries of several of the world's leading literary prizes, including the Orange and Commonwealth Writers' Prizes. And earlier this year, she was awarded an honorary doctorate from Britain's Open University for her contributions to education and culture, especially in extending the map of international writing. So I think you can see why, from all of that we've been incredibly pleased and honoured when Maya accepted our invitation to be chair of the judging panel of the Man Asian Literary Prize. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Maya, and ask you if you will please read out the listed books and the titles of the prize. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. The long list of 15 novels for the 2012 Man Asian Literary Prize in alphabetical order is as follows. Goat Days by Benyamin of India, translated from the Malayalam by Joseph Koyepalli, published by Penguin Books, India. Between Clay and Dust, Musharraf Ali Farooqi, Pakistan, published by Elif Book Company. Another Country, Anjali Joseph, India, published by HarperCollins, Fourth Estate. The Briefcase, Hiromi Kawakami, Japan, translated from the Japanese by Alison Markin Powell, published by Counterpoint Press. Thinner Than Skin, Uzma Aslam Khan, Pakistan, published by Interlink Publishing Group, Clockroot Books, and HarperCollins, Canada. Rue by Kim Thúy, Vietnam, Canada, translated from the French by Sheila Fishman, published by Profile Books, Clerkenwell Press. Black Flower, Young Ha Kim of South Korea, translated from the Korean by Charles Lashour, published by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. Island of a Thousand Mirrors, Nayomi Munaweera, Sri Lanka, published by Pereira Hussein Publishing House. Silent House, Orhan Pamuk, Turkey, translated from the Turkish by Robert Finn, published by Alfred A. Knopf. Honor, Elif Shafak, Turkey, published by Penguin Books, Viking. Northern Girls, Sheng, Keyi, China, translated from the Chinese by Shelley Bryant, published by Penguin China, Viking, in association with Penguin Australia. The Garden of Evening Mists, Tan Twan, Malaysia, published by Myrmidon Books. The Road to Urbino, Roma, Tearne, Sri Lanka, UK, published by Little Brown Group, Abacus. Narcopolis, Jeet Thayil, India, published by Faber and Faber. And finally, The Bathing Women, Taining, translated from the Chinese by Hongling Zhang and Jason Summer, published by HarperCollins, Blue Door, and Simon & Schuster Scribner. I'd just like to say very briefly that the far-ranging stories on our long list draw the reader into some beautiful and some grueling landscapes, from the glaciers of northern Pakistan to the unforgiving Saudi desert, from an affluent Istanbul seaside resort to a Bombay opium den, and further afield to Montreal and Mexico. Many reflect a world on the move, whether for characters privileged to divide their time between cities, for those fleeing war and turmoil, others moving from countryside to booming economic zones, or a few whose debased lives amount to captive labour away from home. Some unearth buried histories, whether of prison camps in Malaya or a new career in Guatemala. The novelty of others lies rather in their freshness of language, perception, even humour. I'm delighted to see this range reflected in the breadth of original languages on our list, with novels translated from Chinese, Japanese and Korean, as well as Turkish, French and Malayalam. But no effort was made on the part of the jurors, myself, Vikram Chandra and Monique Trong, to achieve geographical, national, linguistic spread, or even gender balance, though women are amply represented. Prizes are literary levelers. They give books an equal chance regardless of where they're published or the clout or financial muscle of publishers. These were the best 15 books, and I hope you all enjoy them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Maya.
Hello.
Hi, Harrison here. Hi. We're just going to take a few questions now. I just wonder if anybody would like to kick off with questions, and if you could perhaps come around to the microphone here as well. Or if not, perhaps I could kick off with a question. Obviously, as a great authority on world literature, you read many books from around the world. Looking at this long list, what do you think it says about Asia today?
Well, I was delighted to find such a range of subjects, styles, as well as languages on this list. And one of the reasons I took this invitation up was because it's a Pan-Asian prize and it's multilingual. And I think that simply by choosing the best books, that spread appeared from Turkey to Japan, from Pakistan to Malaysia. And there are, I think, a wonderful variety of linguistic styles and forms that are being used and experimented with in the region. There used to be a tendency, particularly for international publishers, to pick up on large books, the great Indian novel, the great China novel, and so on. I think there's space at this point for much quieter voices. We have a few on our list with, rather than a kind of maximalist, whether magical realist or other form, there's really some spare, very limpid writing and language really stripped bare, which you can see in books, for example, The Briefcase, which is a wonderful love story from Japan between a woman in her late 30s, her former school teacher, now in his 70s, very subtle and humorous. Between Clay and Dust is also the kind of book that might not have reached, certainly my attention in London, had it not been put forward for this prize, because this is a book that looks at a dying, an elegiac look at a dying Urdu culture, a wrestler and a courtesan in a small village, which could be in India, it could be in Pakistan after partition. So those are some, I think it's much easier to talk in specific terms, but those are some of the examples of the kind of writing that perhaps bucks earlier trends of the things that used to reach us.
Oh, hello, Maya. I'm the literary editor of the Asia Literary Review. And we've... hello. You use words like elegiac and spare and prose, but what you're talking about as well is the translator's work. And I'm a real champion of the role of the translator in the literature that is brought to the West, and without whom, we English readers would not, have access to these writers. And the Man Asian Prize is great for giving the translators some money for their work. Do you think that translators should be more lauded and you've mentioned the writers but not the translators? I mean, that's not your job is to make the announcement, but we must thank so many of these great translators who've brought these books to our attention, I suppose, as well. And do you think translators should have their bell rung more loudly nowadays, given they're given more prominence, perhaps?
Thank you very much for that question. As someone who's also been a very great champion of translated literature, I did, of course, one reads out the translators' names. I could also mention them in relation to these books, although between Clay and Dust, I mentioned by Musharraf Ali Farooqi, is actually written in English. It manages to convey a certain Urdu sensibility, apparently, but through his original English. The Briefcase, which is Hiromi Kawakami, is translated from the Japanese by Alison Markin Powell, as I mentioned in the list. Yes, I think it's a wonderful thing that this prize does reward the translator as well as the writer in cases where it's a translated piece of literature. I would also say that the translator's role, which is often unsung but not by this prize, has been crucial in this process. It's a prize for writing in English. It may have been written in a different language, but it's been conveyed by the translator in the English we read. And that was sometimes the crucial point in deciding what books made it and what books didn't make it onto our long list. You see the role of the translator partly when things go wrong, and I think that became an issue of contention and of discussion on our panel. We decided not to give the benefit of the doubt to books that were probably very great in the original language and had been badly served by translators. We're here, of course, to hymn the many translators on the long list, but this is just a caveat and really to suggest how crucial their role is. Without them, we would have half of this long list. I mean, half of them are translated, roughly half, 7 or 8. Which is really a great advance on many previous prizes and of ways of looking at Asian literature. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martin Alexander, also from the Asia Literary Review. Our brief is from Istanbul to North Japan, as Ian Dury might have said, and your long list covers that range. Could you say something about articulating the voice or the voices of Asia? Because this is such a huge span to take into account. And I wondered what your view was of that enormous breadth, which is the one that your long list has covered.
It is an enormous breadth, and yet reading and perhaps concentrating on these 15 books that have made it onto our long list, there were surprising echoes in themes and sometimes approaches within these books. One doesn't like to conflate or generalize about literature and novels, and yet, as I mentioned, there were an awful lot that cover stories of people on the move, but this isn't always the privileged background of those who can live in different cities, but often those who are fleeing war or having to work elsewhere. But there were other echoes as well, in terms of even if people were staying in the same place or were migrating internally, coping with change, coping with modernity, whether it's Silent House, which is Orhan Pamuk's book of 1970s Turkey, and the kind of reactions and pathological reactions, anxieties, fantasies that individuals entertain when they are faced with larger events of modernity and having to catch up with a perceived Western idea of that concept. And others, I mentioned between Clay and Dust, Musharraf Ali Farooqi, people coping with change even without having moved, as it engulfs them. Or there is another book, the Northern Girls by Sheng, Keyi, which involves migration to the economic zones of China, which is translated, I will mention, by Shelley Bryant, wonderfully translated. which again, individuals trying to maintain dignity in the face of overwhelming change. And if that perhaps was the strongest single theme or echo that seemed to thread through many of these books.
Perhaps one thing that I'd be quite interested to know, and people often ask me, is how the judges came to their decision. And because you're obviously spread around the world, how did you, Vikram and Monique, come to the long list? Did you do it via phone, or was it via email? Were there great squabbles in your decision-making process? I wonder if you could just chat us through that a little bit.
Well, it's been quite exciting for me in the sense that I've judged prizes or been on juries of prizes in different parts of the world, but never in many different parts of the world at the same time. That the administration obviously is in Hong Kong. I was in London. Monique Trong was in New York. Vikram Chandra for most of the time was in California. So we were really working on all time zones, which is not something that I, not being a city trader, have to do very often. So I was having calls from David asking for the long list while I was trying to wake Vikram up, and Monique was probably having lunch. But we've been able to use the technological means at our disposal to discuss these books, to go to and fro, to suggest that people look again at some that they may have missed or that they may have read and overlooked. And it's been a process which there's been a great deal of agreement on so far. I'm sure that will become tighter and more I don't know, invigorating, shall we say, about the discussion as it goes forward, as we eliminate many of these wonderful books to reach a shortlist, and then finally a winner in Hong Kong in March.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We look forward to the shortlist, 9th of January, and the winner, which will be announced in March. David, would you like to close?
Yeah, well, just to simply say thank you very much, Maya, for your work and the work of the panel, and also to say thank you for that wonderful exposition of what you've been looking at and thinking about, and I think you've given us a lot of food for thought about how Asian literature at the moment is looking to someone in your position, well-informed position. So I want to thank you very much for that, and I think everyone here would like to show their appreciation of that wonderful summary that you've given. Thank you very much, Maya. So bye-bye, and see you at the shortlist.
Thank you.